Pre-Columbian period, the first Americans, before 1492. Origins and migration. The history of both North and South America begins long before the arrival of Europeans in 1492. The first peoples to inhabit the Americas migrated from Asia, crossing the Bering Land Bridge between Siberia and Alaska during the last ice age, around 15,000 to 30,000 years ago. Over millennia, these early peoples spread across both continents, developing distinct cultures and civilizations based on their local environments. North America. Early civilizations. In North America, indigenous groups developed complex societies long before European contact. Some of the earliest cultures include the Clovis culture, known for its distinctive spear points, and the mound-building Adena and Hopewell cultures of the Ohio River Valley, circa 1000 BCE, 500 CE. These peoples built large ceremonial earthworks and had extensive trade networks. Mississippian culture. The Mississippian culture, 800–1600 CE, represents one of the most sophisticated pre-Columbian civilizations in North America. Its largest city, Cahokia, located near present-day St. Louis, may have housed tens of thousands of people and was a major center of trade, agriculture, and religious activities. The Mississippians were known for their large earthen mounds, such as Monk's Mound, which remains one of the largest prehistoric structures in the Americas. Ancestral Puebloans. In the Southwest, the ancestral Puebloans, also known as the Anasazi, built intricate cliff dwellings and multi-story adobe complexes in places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. These peoples practiced agriculture, especially maize cultivation, and created extensive trade routes that connected them to Mesoamerican cultures. South America. Carolsupe civilization, one of the oldest civilizations in South America, and indeed in the world, is the Carolsupe civilization, 1300 to 1800 BCE, located in present-day Peru. The Carolsupe is noted for its monumental architecture, including large pyramids, plazas, and amphitheaters, as well as advanced agricultural techniques. Moche and Nazca cultures. Other early cultures include the Moche, 100 to 700 CE, and Nazca, 200 BCE, 600 CE, both located in Peru. The Moche are famous for their detailed pottery and sophisticated irrigation systems, while the Nazca are renowned for the Nazca lines, massive geoglyphs that can only be fully appreciated from the air, whose purpose remains a subject of debate. Tiahuanaco and Wari cultures. Further inland, the Tiahuanaco, near Lake Titicaca in modern-day Bolivia, and Wari, centered in present-day Peru, cultures laid the groundwork for the later development of the Inca Empire. Both civilizations were known for their architectural innovations, agricultural techniques, and road systems, which would be expanded upon by the Incas. Rise of empires. The great civilizations of the Americas. Mesoamerica, Central America and Mexico. Olmec civilization. The Olmecs, 1200 to 400 BCE, considered the mother culture of Mesoamerica, were among the first major civilizations in the region. They are best known for their colossal stone heads and influence on later cultures. They developed early writing systems, calendar systems, and religious practices that would shape Mesoamerican culture for centuries. Maya civilization. The Maya, 2000 BCE, 900 CE, reached their peak between 250 to 900 CE, known as the Classical period. They built sophisticated cities like Tikal and Chichen Itza, created a detailed calendar, and developed a complex hieroglyphic writing system. The Maya also made significant advances in astronomy, mathematics, including the use of zero, and architecture, including their famous stepped pyramids. Teotihuacan, near modern-day Mexico City. The city of Teotihuacan, 100 BCE, 550 CE, was one of the largest urban centers in the ancient world, with a population exceeding 100,000. Its most famous structures are the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. Teotihuacan was a major religious and economic center, influencing much of Mesoamerica until its mysterious decline around 550 CE. Aztec Empire. By the 14th century, the Aztec Empire rose to prominence in central Mexico. Their capital, Tenochtitlan, was a city of canals and causeways built on Lake Texcoco, where Mexico City stands today. The Aztecs developed a tribute-based empire, expanding through conquest and forming alliances. They practiced ritual human sacrifice as a part of their religion, believing it was necessary to appease their gods, particularly the sun god Huitzilopochtli. South America, the Inca Empire. The Inca Empire, 1438 to 1533, was the largest empire in pre-Columbian America, stretching from modern-day Colombia to Chile. Its capital, Cusco, was the heart of an extensive and highly organized administrative system. The Inca are known for their impressive engineering feats, including terraced agriculture, irrigation systems, and roads that span thousands of miles across the Andes, known as the CapCut. Machu Picchu, built as a royal estate for the Inca ruler Pachacuti, remains one of the most iconic archaeological sites in the world. The Inca were masters of stone masonry, fitting massive stones together without mortar, a technique called ashlar masonry. The Inca also developed the quipu, a system of knotted strings used for record keeping, which allowed for complex data management despite their lack of a written language. European exploration and colonization, 15th to 18th centuries. North America. Columbus and early exploration. Christopher Columbus' arrival in the Caribbean in 1492, under the Spanish crown, marked the beginning of widespread European exploration and colonization of the Americas. Following Columbus, other explorers, such as John Cabot, for England, and Jacques Cartier, for France, began mapping the eastern coasts of North America. Spanish colonization. Spain quickly established colonies in the Caribbean and expanded into what is now Florida, Mexico, and the southwestern United States. The Spanish set up missions, forts, and settlements, such as St. Augustine, founded in 1565, which is the oldest continuously inhabited European established settlement in the continental U.S. French and English colonies. The French established colonies along the St. Lawrence River, present-day Quebec, and focused on the fur trade with indigenous peoples. The English established Jamestown in 1607, the first permanent English settlement, followed by the Plymouth colony in 1620. Over time, the English colonies grew, eventually forming the 13 colonies that would declare independence in 1776. South America. Spanish conquest. The Spanish quickly moved to conquer the major empires of the Americas. Hernán Cortés led the conquest of the Aztec Empire, 1519 to 1521, while Francisco Pizarro conquered the Inca Empire in the 1530s. The Spanish established large colonial territories known as viceroyalties, the most significant being the Viceroyalty of New Spain, Mexico, and the Viceroyalty of Peru, centered in Lima. Portuguese Brazil. In 1500, Portuguese explorer Pedro Álvares Cabral claimed Brazil for Portugal. Portuguese settlers established sugar plantations along the coast, relying heavily on enslaved African labor, which became a cornerstone of the colony's economy. Brazil would become one of the largest importers of African slaves in the world. Colonial societies and the Atlantic world. North America. Colonial life and economy. By the 17th century, the English, French, Dutch, and Spanish had established colonies across North America. The economy of the colonies varied widely. The southern English colonies developed large-scale plantation economies, based on tobacco, rice, and cotton, that relied heavily on enslaved African labor, while the northern colonies were more diversified, with smaller farms, trade, and industry. French and Indian War. In the mid-18th century, the French and Indian War, 1754 to 1763, part of the global 7 Years' War, pitted British colonists against French settlers and their Native American allies. Britain's victory led to the expansion of its territories in North America, but the financial strain of the war contributed to growing tensions between Britain and its American colonies. South America. Spanish colonial society. Spanish colonies in South America were organized under a strict caste system, with peninsulars, Spaniards born in Spain, at the top, followed by criollos, people of Spanish descent born in the Americas, mestizos, people of mixed European and indigenous ancestry, and indigenous and African peoples at the bottom. This hierarchy created deep social divides that would later fuel independence movements. Silver mining, especially at Potosi, in modern Bolivia, became a cornerstone of the Spanish colonial economy. The vast amounts of silver extracted from South America helped fund the Spanish Empire but also led to the exploitation and decimation of indigenous populations through systems like the encomienda and mita, which forced indigenous labor in mines and plantations. Independence movements, 18th to 19th centuries. North America. American Revolution. The 13 British colonies in North America declared their independence from Britain in 1776, inspired by Enlightenment ideals of liberty and self-governance. After a long war, the United States of America was officially recognized in 1783. The new nation quickly expanded westward, fueled by the belief in manifest destiny, the idea that it was America's divine mission to expand across the continent. Canadian Confederation. In 1867, Canada became a self-governing dominion within the British Empire with the passage of the British North America Act. Canada gradually expanded its territory westward through treaties with indigenous peoples, purchases from the Hudson's Bay Company, and the establishment of new provinces and territories. South America. Independence movements. Inspired by the American and French revolutions, independence movements spread across Latin America in the early 19th century. Key leaders included Simon Bolívar, known as the Liberator, who led the struggle for independence in northern South America, including modern-day Venezuela, Colombia, Ecuador, and Bolivia. In the south, José de San Martín played a crucial role in the liberation of Argentina, Chile, and Peru. Brazil's independence. Brazil's independence from Portugal came relatively peacefully in 1822. Dom Pedro I, the son of the Portuguese king, declared Brazil's independence and became its first emperor. Brazil was unique in Latin America for retaining a monarchy until the late 19th century. 19th century, nation-building, conflict, and expansion. North America. Westward expansion and Native American displacement. In the 19th century, the U.S. rapidly expanded westward, acquiring territories through war, purchase, and treaties. This expansion led to the displacement of Native American peoples through forced relocation, wars, and broken treaties. The Trail of Tears, 1838 to 1839, saw the forced removal of the Cherokee from their ancestral lands to Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma, resulting in the deaths of thousands. Civil War. The expansion of the United States also heightened tensions over the issue of slavery, which ultimately led to the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865. The war ended with the defeat of the Confederacy and the abolition of slavery, but the Reconstruction period that followed was marked by significant challenges in integrating formerly enslaved African Americans into the social and political fabric of the nation. South America. Wars and instability. The 19th century in South America was marked by wars between the newly independent states and internal conflicts over political control. For example, the War of the Triple Alliance, 1864 to 1870, saw Argentina, Brazil, and Uruguay ally against Paraguay, resulting in the near destruction of Paraguay. Similarly, the War of the Pacific, 1879 to 1884, between Chile, Bolivia, and Peru reshaped the political map of the continent. Economic development and European influence. In the late 19th century, countries like Argentina and Brazil began to experience significant economic growth, particularly through the export of agricultural products like beef, coffee, and sugar. This period also saw a large wave of European immigration, particularly to Argentina, Uruguay, and southern Brazil, which transformed the demographics of the region. 20th century, modernization, conflicts, and the Cold War. North America. The U.S. as a global power. By the early 20th century, the U.S. had become an economic powerhouse and an emerging global power. Its involvement in World War I, 1917 to 1918, and World War II, 1941 to 1945, solidified its role as a major player in international affairs. Following World War II, the U.S. entered the Cold War, 1947 to 1991, with the Soviet Union, a period marked by ideological, political, and military struggles between the capitalist West and the communist East. Civil rights movements. The mid-20th century in the U.S. was also characterized by social movements aimed at achieving equality for marginalized groups. The Civil Rights Movement, 1950s, 1960s, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., sought to end racial segregation and discrimination against African Americans. The women's liberation movement and LGBTQ+ rights movements also gained momentum during this time. Canada? Canada followed a more peaceful trajectory, expanding its territories and developing as a constitutional monarchy. In the mid-20th century, it became a leader in peacekeeping and human rights, gradually gaining full sovereignty from Britain. Canada's multicultural policies and focus on immigration have made it a model of diversity in the modern world. South America. Authoritarianism and dictatorships. The 20th century in South America saw a wave of military coups and authoritarian regimes, many of which were supported by the US during the Cold War as part of its policy to contain communism. Countries like Argentina, Chile, Brazil, and Uruguay experienced brutal dictatorships during the 1960s and 1970s. In Chile, Augusto Pinochet's regime, 1973 to 1990, was infamous for human rights abuses, including the torture and disappearance of thousands of political opponents. Cuban Revolution. In 1959, the Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro overthrew the US-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista. Cuba aligned itself with the Soviet Union, becoming a key player in Cold War politics. The Bay of Pigs invasion, 1961, and the Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962, brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. Economic struggles and reforms. The latter half of the 20th century saw periods of economic hardship in many South American countries. Hyperinflation, debt crises, and social inequality plagued countries like Argentina, Brazil, and Venezuela. In response, many countries implemented neoliberal reforms in the 1990s, but these often led to increased inequality and social unrest. 21st century, globalization, social movements, and challenges. North America. Economic and political influence. The US remains one of the most influential countries globally, both economically and militarily. However, challenges such as political polarization, income inequality, and systemic racism continue to shape its internal dynamics. In recent decades, the US has faced growing competition from other global powers, especially China. Indigenous rights and reconciliation. In both the US and Canada, there have been ongoing efforts to address the historical injustices faced by Indigenous peoples. In Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, 2008 to 2015, was established to investigate the abuses of the residential school system, and in the US, various tribes have fought for sovereignty and recognition of their rights. South America. Social movements and political shifts. In recent years, South America has seen a wave of social movements calling for greater equality, indigenous rights, and environmental protection. Countries like Chile have seen protests against economic inequality, while Brazil and Bolivia have faced conflicts over indigenous lands and deforestation in the Amazon. The election of leaders like Evo Morales in Bolivia marked a shift toward recognizing indigenous rights, although political instability remains an issue. Economic challenges. Countries like Venezuela have experienced severe economic crises, partly due to mismanagement and falling oil prices, leading to hyperinflation, shortages of goods, and mass migration. Other countries like Brazil and are with corruption scandals, economic downturns, and political polarization.